Welcome to Following on India. I'm Jared Kimber. With me is Saurabh Samani. We're on the talkSPORT cricket channel, and we're going to be looking at India's massive win. In fact, just to explain how big a win this is, it's the biggest win by runs that India have ever had in Australia. And the second biggest was during World Series cricket when they didn't even have all their strongest players, Australia. So India essentially played a second 11. And also, this is the first time that Australia has lost consecutive tests at home since 2016 against South Africa. So this is big no matter how you look at it. And we're going to be looking at all the big things. We're not going to talk too much about the day's action. Obviously, Travis Head batted quite well. And Jasper Bumrah is still quite a handy bowler. What I really want to do today, though, Saurabh, is look at the bigger picture here. I want you to pretend that you are buying stocks in these different things, and whether you're buying or you're selling, right? So I'm gonna give you a bunch of different concepts, and then you're gonna explain to me why you're buying this or you're selling it. So buying means you're for it, selling means you're against it. Let's start very simply. India's form for the next test. Are you buying it or are you selling it?
Can I put riders? Or I have to...
You can put anything you want, but then the fans will just think that you're sitting on the fence. No, you can do whatever you want.
No, if Mohammad Shami is available, definitely buying. If he's not, maybe still buying, but more cautiously. If Mohammad Shami is available, I'm buying it like I'm an insider trader.
You're all in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pushing all the chips into the middle. I think that's a fair way of looking at it. I think I'm probably similar. My biggest issue for the next test is that it's the day-night test, and Australia's been so good at those and everything else. But they still don't have a top four. Like it's going to help their bowlers. I'm not sure it's going to help their batters enough. So from that point of view, I think I'm with you. I think I'm willing to buy it. But having said that, even if India play well in the next test, they could still lose it just because it's something that Australia do very well in. Is that kind of how you feel?
Yes, I do. And Australia have had, limited greater experience, but greater experience than India of pink ball tests, especially in Australia. They play it once a year at least. So that way they have that edge, and pink ball tests behaves just so differently than normal tests where, the flow of the game, it just goes like that. Because the last session is certainly the most difficult to bat in, and it just everything is inverted. So from that point of view, Australia have that edge because they have greater experience with that kind of flow, and India perhaps don't. But that said, if you have an attack of Bumrah, Shami, Siraj with a swinging pink ball, with Australia's batting having the trouble it has, I'm buying India.
Yep, I think that makes sense. Australia for the series, are you buying or selling?
Well, that's the tough one. I was hoping you wouldn't ask that. For the series, selling.
So I'll tell you what I came about with. Are you selling? Okay, interesting. So I came in saying that if Shami wasn't available, 4-1 was the most likely result to Australia. If Shami was available, I would go back to my original tip, which was 3-2 to Australia. I don't know if I'm changing that much based on one test, because a lot of things went right for India in this test, even if they played brilliant cricket as well. But that top four, I had some questions about the Australian top four before. At the moment, it's like I have incredible ones. So I think that doesn't mean by you saying you're selling, doesn't mean you think Australia is necessarily going to lose. But what it probably does mean at the moment for both of us is that and I'm selling as well, that it's far less likely that Australia win easily, and it's far less likely that Australia win than we thought coming in. So is that kind of where your head's at?
Completely where my head's at. Because of the first test result. I think before the first test, I would have been like you, 4-1. And I don't know how... I might have lent towards 3-2 more if Shami was available, but not by too much. Yeah. Simply because of the New Zealand whitewash, where also a lot of things happened in sequence which were very, let's say, unlikely. And for both teams, like New Zealand found guys picking up form, taking fire at the right time. India found guys just losing form at the wrong time. And all of that kept happening. So that's why the 3-0 was there. But the thing after the 3-0 whitewash is you do start to have some questions. I mean, even India did, like before this test, before Jasprit Bumrah started bowling, everyone was like, there were a lot of questions about India's 11, dropping Ashwin, Jadeja, not having Rohit and Gill available, and two debutants, and you leaving out Prasidh Krishna, who you think would be the kind of hit the deck fast bowler who would be useful here, but you leave him out. So there were a lot of questions. Obviously, those questions just disappeared after the test.
Well, I think they went out to they were most places you could bet they were more than 10-1 after that first innings, right? So to go from there to winning by 200 and whatever runs it was, I've written it down somewhere, but I've lost it again. 295. I know it's in front of me somewhere, but to go from that to 295 runs, it's massive, right? It's absolutely massive. Okay, so that's all fair, right? Great. Kohli's form, buying or selling?
Buying.
Ooh, okay. I like this. I think I'm with you. My issue is that he probably batted in the best situation of any batter in this test match. And so there's a part of me that's like, everything went right for him. But also, he's had a few of those situations in the last 5 years and he still hasn't made any runs. So he looked a lot better to me. So I think I'm buying, but I don't think I'm massively buying. You feel, sounds like you're a little bit more confident
Yeah,
than me.
I think so. And I would actually say Devdutt Patikal got the best situation in the match to bat in, not Kohli. He came in with the new ball 17 overs away, so with the ball doing its least, with a massive opening stand behind him,
Okay.
the Australian bowlers flagging, and he had.
Yeah, it is a bit hard. The only thing I would say about that is I get your point, but it is a little bit hard to come in batting straight after a big partnership because you're sitting there for a day and a bit waiting. Oh, is it? Am I going to go in now? But I get your overall point. And he didn't make as many runs as Kohli did, so that's fine. I just thought Kohli moved really well though, so that would be where my buy comes from. The 100 is less important to me. The fact that he looked like he was moving really well for the first 40 or so runs is kind of where I was sold.
Yeah, for me also, he moved more decisively, and also there was that period where India lost 3 wickets for what, I don't know, 10 runs or something. And he just stayed through
Yeah,
that period
8
where
runs. Yeah.
you feel like at any point in the past 5 years, he might have been part of that collapse. But he stayed through and then he, carried on and then finished with that flourish. That's why I'm more certain in buying.
Australia's top 4.
Do you have, how big a bucket do you have? I want to sell lots.
I
Except for
I
Steve
think I
Smith.
was probably more. Well, we'll get to him because he's separate to this. Although he's part of the 4, but I'm talking about the 4 as a whole. I think I was probably the person who mentioned Australia's top 4 the most coming into this series of any media person. Every time I had a chance, I was like, just so that you're all aware, no one's making runs. It's not just Marnus. It's not just Smith. It's like the whole thing. Khawaja hasn't been making any runs as well. I think they will be better in the next test. So I get the idea of selling them, but I actually think this is probably the best time to buy them because I don't think they will be this consistently bad all the way through.
Yeah, if you were treating them like stocks, like you would stocks, then yeah, maybe it's difficult to hit a lower point than this, so it makes sense to buy. But I'm buying only to sell later.
Yes. Yeah. No one's buying for the long term based on what they're doing at the moment. I've got another interesting one for you. Siraj's form.
Yeah, I'm really. I think I'll buy just because of the ball he bowled to Steve Smith. This is not a rational buy. It's a emotion driven buy, because if you can get Steve Smith out with that kind of a ball, when Steve Smith has come in, I mean, one thing is that Steve Smith, we all saw he changed his trigger movement and all that, but I think when you make changes in your technique, what you lose in the swings, you gain in the roundabouts kind of thing. He made himself less vulnerable to the ball keeping low and coming straight and targeting his stumps, but he made himself more vulnerable to the ball in the channel, and Siraj caught it right there. And but he had to make it inch perfect, but that's how you get Steve Smith out when Steve Smith is in a mood, and he got it. So just because of that ball, I'm buying.
I'm selling
You're selling. Okay, why?
because he usually has one good test where everything works rhythm-wise, and then he goes into the next test and it doesn't work. I think he should still take wickets in the next test because it's the pink ball and he skids it on, and I can see why he might be successful. But I don't think he's going to bowl as well in the next test as he's bowled in this test. So that's my thing with Siraj. If you look at the history of Siraj, it's like he can take wickets in any place. He can take wickets with the new ball, with the old ball. He's got all these skills. But is he consistent from match to match? Almost never, right? Like he does go up and down so much. So I'm going out. Here's another. This one's fun too. Mitchell Starc. His form, buying or selling?
Buying. Pink ball test.
Are you buying partly because the next is the pink ball test? Yes, you are. Of course you are. No, I think I feel roughly the same. I just thought he looked in really good rhythm, right? I think he's just got overpaid for the IPL, so he should be pretty confident with that. And he looks in really good rhythm. I actually thought he should have taken more wickets in this test match than he ended up with. So yeah, I'm with you. I would buy him.
He actually did have one more wicket, but he didn't take that review when Nitish Kumar gloved that ball behind. So he would have had one more at least. But yeah, buying.
Harshit Rana as a test bowler, buying or selling?
I'm selling because if I'm buying based on Mohammad Shami coming back, then I think Harshit Rana will be the one to sit out. So selling.
Yep, no, that's fair. I think selling at the moment makes sense with him. What about long term? What did you see? Would you buy or sell him based on that?
Long term, I would buy. I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
He showed enough glimpses of what he can do. Obviously, he also showed that he's raw, and there is some work to be done. But he showed glimpses of what he can do, and he has a first class century. So I'm buying. Yeah.
I think he's interesting because he's a strike bowler, but he's not that fast. And so he there's an element where he kind of reminds me of someone like O'Rourke from New Zealand, where you're like, there's a lot of raw tools to work with, but also he went at about 6 runs and over. And he went at double the amount of runs per over in the first innings that the Indian seamers went at. So he's a strike bowler who's not particularly fast, but he's tall and he hits the wicket hard and he's very aggressive. I think he needs a better stock ball. I think he just needs the ability to hit a line and length a little bit more, and then occasionally he can let loose with his fast and more sporadic bowling. But yeah, overall, I'm with you. I would buy, and at the moment, I would sell. All right, Steve Smith,
Buying.
You're buying.
I'm
okay,
buying.
okay.
I just this is complete gut feel call. There is no sort of rational basis to it, but I'm buying. What would you do with Steve Smith?
You buying? Are you buying for this series, or you buying for the next couple of years?
Both.
Okay. What's my feeling? I thought he actually batted really well today and looked really good on a wicket that's not the sort of wicket that you expect Steve Smith to make runs on. He likes consistency of bounce and everything else. He was clearly put off by the pitch, and that, as you said before, you described the Siraj ball again, so I'm not going to go through it, but I think he was put off by the pitch quite a bit at that stage. I just thought he was moving fine, and he looked okay. The first innings was a golden duck. I'm not too worried about that. More worried about the fact it was an LBW than I am that it was a golden duck. But I thought he looked okay. So it doesn't matter anyway, because he's not going to get dropped, because there's 2 other guys in the order in the top 4 who are listed to be dropped before him. So chances are he makes runs. So I'm happy with that. McSweeney as an opener.
I mean, I feel bad for the guy, but I have to sell.
Yeah, I mean, he just didn't look like a test opener, did he? I mean, let's be honest. He looked like someone who was trying to work it out in real time against one of the best bowlers in the world. Both times McSweeney came out were helpful situations for India to be bowling as well.
Yeah, exactly. Everything was against him, and he's not even a natural opener. Nope. So he's batted more in the middle order, right? In Shield cricket.
Mostly number 4,
Yeah.
a little bit at number 5, and a little bit at number 3. So I think he opened in the Australia A game. Look, we haven't seen enough of it. I like his record, and I like his age. I like the way he moves as a cricketer, and he knows his game. But he at no stage did he come out and did he look like he was understanding test opening. And sometimes you see those players like, Khawaja and Watson who late career become openers, right? It's like by the stage they've done it, they actually already know what international cricket kind of is and they understand it. When you're asking a guy who 6 months ago wasn't even in line to play for Australia to suddenly open the batting against Bumrah on a green wicket and then under the shadows at the end of the day, like it's just you need an opener for that situation. You need someone who just has a little bit more confidence in themselves in that role. So I mean, I don't think they can drop him because we'll come to the other one coming up in a minute. But talking about openers, I want to switch this. KRL as an opener, are you buying or selling?
I think it would be better for the Indian batting lineup if he stays as an opener. But I have to sell because I don't think that will happen. I think he'll go back to number 5 or 6. So I have to sell.
You don't think he'll bat 3 next test?
Not if Shubman Gill is fit, which he should be.
Yeah, I suppose if Shubman Gill is fit, he will. But I'm kind of thinking that's the spot that I would like to bat him in next test would be 3. The problem is that then Gill is going to want, even if Gill isn't fit the next test, he will be the test afterwards anyway. So that means that KRL might bat open 3 and then 6.
Which is his whole career anyway. So
yeah, it's his whole career in a nutshell. All right. So we've done the buying and selling. There's a couple of other points I want to finish up on here. First one is, if this is Bumrah's best test this series, do India still win this series?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
If this is Bumrah's best test, so if we've just seen him at his best in Perth, and every other test, I'm not saying he drops off massively, but he never outperforms what we saw in this test, do India still win the series?
No. I think India need Bumrah to be...
That's kind of how I feel.
Be at this level.
That's a concern for me that we both think that, because it's going to be very hard for Bumrah to stay at this level the whole way through because, even by his own magical standards, he was pretty fantastic in this game.
I mean, I think if Bumrah maintains normal Bumrah level, it's not a concern. It's only if he goes below, if he has an off test or something, then it's a concern. Normal Bumrah level, this was maybe slightly higher than normal Bumrah level also, but he's just made us so used to, just being excellent throughout that maybe we're a little spoiled and we think this is how it will be. He's allowed to have an off test. But if he does, then I think India will be in trouble.
Can Australia win this series without a functioning top 3?
Yes, they can.
Yeah, I kind of think that as well. Because we're annoyingly agreeing with each other here.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, my theory goes back to the time when Australia beat England in what was it, 13-14. I know it's a long time ago, so I'm not saying the team.
The Mitchell Johnson series.
Australia had no function. Yeah, Australia basically Mitchell Johnson, Ryan Harris, and Brad Haddon won that series for Australia. Right, it was like 3 players won the whole series. I think Australia is a little bit more even now than they were back then. So I'm not saying it's going to be as dramatic as we saw back then. But if we both think that Smith is going to get slightly better at the very least and look like he was finding some kind of form, I think Head is fantastic, and we saw that again. Mitch Marsh batted really well, again on a pitch that I don't think he was particularly suited to. Alex Carey looks like, and I was more than even after Alex Carey made the 100 against New Zealand, I was ready to get rid of Alex Carey, and now I'm looking at him going, actually, he's massively back in form. And the bowling was still fine. I think there's enough there. Obviously, they would prefer Khawaja or someone to make runs at the top. But I can see a way where they have a very, very bad start to a bunch of test matches and still play well in this series without it. So I think that's probably quite fair. This is the other one I have for you. This is the second last question. Jadeja or Ashwin come back for the next test?
Can I ask you questions?
No, never. Yes, you can.
No, because that was my question to you. What would you do? Who will be a spinner in the next test? Or will India just go Will India just replace Washington Sundar with Shami and can go in with a 4 pace attack?
I always think in the day-night tests, it's nice to have a spinner because there's always that bit where the ball goes a bit soft, and and you just want to be able to bowl, without your fast bowlers just bowling with a, piece of foam, right? Like your spinners can get away with that in a way that your fast bowlers can't. So I think you want a spinner. If they think Washington's ready to take over from the other two, then you keep Washington in. But I think that Jadeja is. It's incredible that they actually dropped Jadeja and won by 295 runs, which just tells you the depth. Like imagine Australia dropping anyone from this team at the moment and like bringing them back for another game. Like you would never think about it that way. It's just not something that they could even do. So I think I would bring Jadeja back unless I am sure that it is time for Washington to take over the main role. But I didn't think he bowled so brilliantly in conditions that they're not great for spinners, but they were made for taller spinners. And I think Jadeja is the more solid bat at number 7 at the moment, even if Washington Sundar has a higher ceiling than Jadeja does.
So I think what the Indian team management thought is they wanted an off spinner for this test, and Washington Sundar's batting ability actually won him the spot. I'm sure they were also concerned because India. It's not like India have been scoring truckloads of runs, so I think they were also concerned. So they went with the safer choice, you could say, in terms of batting. And also, obviously, if Ashwin had picked up a huge bunch of wickets against New Zealand, India had won that series 3-0, then it would be a much tougher call. But since Ashwin had like I don't know, it's a Halley's Comet event. Once in 76 years, Ashwin is going to have a bad series in India. He had that against New Zealand. And that's why they went with Washington Sundar. But one of the things we have seen with this Indian team is they don't really change stuff around. And there's already going to be 2 changes at least I'm assuming Gill will be fit because there's a long time away. So Rohit Gill coming back, Padikkal Jural going out. Shami, if he comes back, then one of Harshit Rana or Washington Sundar going out. Let's say Harshit Rana goes out. I don't see them making that change, especially after such a win. And Washington batted quite decently in the second innings. So, yeah, I think they would still go with Washington.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not too worried about it. There was nothing about his bowling or his batting that made me think he needs to go out the side. I saw him as a specialist for that test, and perhaps they don't. And that might be the difference between the way they're thinking about it and the way that I'm thinking about it. All right, let's finish off with the big one. Would you drop Marnus Labuschagne?
Yeah. But actually, that comes with a rider. Who would replace him if you drop him? Who are the guys in Australia who are knocking on the doors?
Yeah. So I know there's been some big calls in Australia by people saying he should be dropped. I'm getting, all my mates in Australia are like, we have to drop Marnus. And it's like, guys, have you seen what's going on in Shield cricket at the moment, right? Like, I think you could find a pretty good number 4. I mean, if you think about it, you've got Cameron Green when he's fit. You've got Josh Inglis. Both could probably bat number 4. Travis Head, maybe even these days, could go up to number 4. Number 5, you could throw in maybe someone like Webster. And McSweeney at number 4 as well, or number 5. Number 5, you've got probably someone like Webster. You've probably got Aaron Hardy as well. And the same with number 6s. No problems at all. Backup wicketkeeper, that's all sorted. If you drop someone from the top 3, right, and they might have to drop someone again the next test. So if they drop Marnus from this next test and McSweeney doesn't make any runs, you then have to make another change the game after. You're running out of actual human bodies to be able to go up the order and play. So and the players that you're talking about realistically are Renshaw, Harris, and Bancroft, right? There's a reason that none of those 3 are in ahead of McSweeney to begin with. All right? Like, it's not an accident that this has happened. Then the other option, of course, is Constas. Or Murray Goodwin's son. Is it Jalen? Jaden? Something Goodwin. It's certainly Goodwin. His last name is Goodwin. That I am sure of. Yeah. So you're talking about either two really young, untried prospects, and I think Goodwin's first class average is like 28 or something, right? Like, not like he's bursting down any doors. And then you've got the three other experienced players. I think Renshaw I probably would have gone with Renshaw anyway, but they went with McSweeney, which is fine. I didn't think that was a massive error. But if you drop Marnus for one of those guys, that is what you're doing. You are dropping a guy who is in terrible form for replacements who aren't knocking down any doors at all, with the idea that you might have to straight after replace one of the other guys at the top of the order as well. Like, it's not easy at all to make that decision. I'm not saying, and having said all that, remember what happened with Babar Azam? I think Marnus is very similar. It's not even that I would call it a dropping. I would just say to Marnus, just take 2 weeks off, mate. Just take a couple of weeks off, work out what's going on. We'll work it out without you, and then in a couple of weeks' time you can come back and we'll see how we go. Like, we know how obsessive he is and how much he's into cricket. He's got that sort of Glenn Phillips-like personality. Wants to do everything on a cricket field at all times. I think he just needs 2 weeks to himself. Maybe, I don't know, go on a road trip or something, or check into an Airbnb in the country.
Just go fishing or whatever. Maybe just take a break, But I wanted to ask you, is it possible to once again ask Steve Smith to change his batting spot and ask him to come at 3? And then you have better options at 4.
Yes, it has to be, doesn't it? Like, I think there's every chance. But that's what the big issue is here, is no matter what they do from here on in, people are going to have to move, right? So let's say they go all in. They just hit the panic button now. Marnus gets dropped for the next test match. You would be better, if you're going to do that, to rearrange the whole batting order, move Smith to 3 and move McSweeney to 4 and bring in one of the other more experienced openers to open.
Let's say
Right?
Renshaw.
If you're going to do it, this is the time to do it, I think. Don't you think?
Yeah. So that seems like a reasonable way to go, but I don't know. Will Steve Smith be okay to move to 3? I mean, he wanted to.
I have no idea.
There was this big thing about him going back to number 4, where he's most suited. I mean, obviously he has an unbelievable record at 4 also, but you would think that the guy who is most equipped to deal with whatever number 3 brings is still Steve Smith. Even though it might not be his ideal position, it might be the ideal position for Australia now. And then maybe Marnus takes a break, road trip, fishing, surfing, whatever he wants to do, comes back refreshed and slightly, in a better mind space, and then comes back at 3 and Smith can go back to 4.
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, that makes a lot of sense. It's just there's no easy answers to fix that top 3. So perhaps the better option then is to go with Smith at 4, keep him there, and just bring in one extra player for this test, and then if it goes poorly again, bring in one extra player for the next test and go about it from that point of view. That's probably what they're going to do, because they will be thinking, and I think they should think this, they will be thinking, we go to the pink test, and that should be our chance to become one all, because we're so good at these test matches, and India isn't experienced in the same way. But I also think the opposite is quite true. Like, if I'm India, if I was Gambhir or Rohit right now, I'd be saying, guys, we get a free hit in Adelaide. We didn't expect to be 1-0 up. We've absolutely smashed them. Let's just go for it in Adelaide. And if we come away with a win there, the series is ours. And if we don't, it's 1-1 and it becomes a dogfight again. And we can take it from there. So, I think both teams, should be quite happy coming to this next test in a weird way because of the situation. And you don't normally get that. And like Australia losing at home and losing 2 in a row at home, like all these things are abnormal, but I can see that. Saurabh, we will be back probably tomorrow or this afternoon or whenever it is to have a look at the next, the IPL auction here on Following On India. But just right now, before we get to the Following On auction, just as a tease, what is the thing that has surprised you the most with the IPL auction as we've seen it at the moment?
there's two things. One is Shreyas Iyer's price. I knew it'd go for high, but not
It wasn't high enough. You wanted him paid higher.
35 crore. But and the other is RCB's circumspection. This is the first auction that I think I can recall where RCB have not gone all out, big bang, big bucks for the big stars. They've held back, which is interesting.
No, definitely. My one, I mean, Shreyas Iyer is the obvious one, of course, and Venki Iyer, all the Iyers, really. But the other one that I would throw in is Tikshana, going for only 4 crore, when I think he's a fantastic bowler and he's young and only getting better. So I thought that was an interesting one, the Sri Lankan mystery spinner there. But we will be back to talk about that very soon here on Following on India, which you can follow on the talkSPORT YouTube cricket channel. You can find us there. You can find me and Saurabh everywhere on your social media. On your Twitters, on your Blue Skies, on your Threads, I don't know, whichever one that you're using these days, we'll probably be on one of them. And we will speak to you again very soon about the IPL Mega Auction.